Welcome to a dialogue on accountability in the digital age. A dialogue with representatives of a global, multi-stakeholder community.
And I'm your host, Frits Bussemaker, host of these I4ADA Dialogues. And with me, I have Guy de Felcourt. Guy, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Frits, to invite me. I'm very happy to be with you today.
We're going to discuss with Guy the digital and extraterritorial outreach. He's a researcher and lecturer on this topic. By the way, he's also a co-founder of the Identity and Know Your Customer Forum, which brings together both public and private sectors. So a broad experience in the area of digital. But today we're going to focus on the need to have a discussion on extraterritorial outreach. Guy, again, welcome to the program. Could you please start off by taking the audience with what is the concept of digital and extraterritorial outreach? What are we talking about?
Yeah, it's the truth is it's quite a new concept, but it is really about creating new relationships between the state and the citizens or their nationals abroad or with their corporate organizations, which are essentially creating these links which are aterritorials. And so they can take digital form, they can take other forms. So this is what it is about. It's about really allowing the different governments and states to optimize their relationships with all their communities abroad as inside their territories.
Okay. Could you give me an example of what an aterritorial relationship could be?
Yeah, well, the truth is that the notion of territory has evolved during the history. So at the beginning, it was very linked to the agricultural land. Then it became more the geographical space. And maybe we can say that around the 17th century, with the Westphalian Treaty and the sovereignty of states, it became a jurisdictional space. And we have interesting theories by the 20th century, for instance, with Mr. James Meyer, which is an American writer, who wrote that it is a political space. And maybe today we consider it really to an activity and identity space. So that would be the concept that we would try to promote in this approach on extraterritoriality or a new concept of territoriality.
Okay, so the territory isn't well. The concept of the notion of territory is changed by the fact that we live in cyberspace, and it has a global impact. Again, could you give me some examples so we understand how it's going to be applied?
Yes, and not only by the fact that we are in a more globalized environment and digital, but also, for instance, now we have 2/3 of states who are recognizing double nationality or double citizenship, I would call it better.
Okay.
And so we have really, we are targeting, for instance, diasporas. Many countries have very large diasporas living outside their borders. There is also the typically borderline population and also the linguistic affinity population, which is often very open to cultural influence. So all these communities represent potential targets for these new kind of relationships.
Okay. Makes me think, by the way, that does this also mean that we're going to see, I'd say, two types of people? I was thinking of my physical being is still going to be linked to a geography because I am here, but my avatar online may be anywhere. So is that something which is to be considered?
Yes, I would not put it so radically. I would maybe present a difference between the original concept of nationality, which is where you are born, where are your cultural heritage, and the concept more contractual about citizenship is where you want to live,
Yeah.
which state you want to have contractual arrangement with, what kind of status you want to have, so what kind of economic relation you want to have. So maybe yes, it would be more on this. So both are very formal links, but let's say yes, there is a distinction between what is your, let's say, cultural heritage, what is your original community, and what are the communities you want to become affiliated with later on.
Okay. Now, why is this topic gaining relevance today?
Well, it's getting relevance because today we have developed all the technological and tools to develop to allow it to function. And also we have developed many governance and legal aspects that can allow it to function much better than it used in the past. So we have first a certain qualitative maturity of globalization. We have also international instruments already in place, for instance, for investment arbitration, for instance, for the internet governance with the ICANN, for instance, with the share space like oceans, like galactic space, for instance, with the postal union, universal postal union with postal arrangement, with air travel, with and many maritimes. I mean, many collaboration that we have abroad. So we have this more or less working environment at this stage. We can also expect that people are wanting to have more freedom of choice.
Okay.
We can interpret that way what we see relating, for instance, decentralized finance, decentralized identity, self-sovereign approaches. So we have, yes, many conditions. And another one is the greater harmonization between the states. For instance, within the space of the European Union, the states have reached a certain ground of harmonization for the market, for the legal aspects, for the digital spaces. So it's allow really to work together much better now.
Okay. Now, how who is actually having this discussion on the need for extraterritorial, you could say, outreach? So, who is driving this discussion? You said it's becoming more relevant. Who is driving that?
Yeah, well, first that we are seeing this practice to increase worldwide. For instance, everyone knows the approach of the FCPA, which is the Foreign Corrupt Act in the United States, which allow the United States also through its money or through the links with American persons to gain jurisdiction on persons abroad and on corporate organizations abroad. We also know, for instance, programs like the Estonian e-residency,
Yeah.
which it's a law to have ties with Estonia on more economical nature. We know also of maybe sometimes controversial subjects, like for instance, the service police station of China abroad, which the Chinese say they are to bring assistance to their citizens, and others say they may serve to other purposes. But we see that these practices are increasing worldwide. So we need to gain a more, let's say, we need to adopt a more offensive way to approach this practice. And unfortunately, this is not the case today. For instance, what we see in the European Union is they have adopted essentially this blocking act, which is really, I don't think, at the level of the scale of the new practice which we can observe today worldwide. So we need to maybe improve our response capacity and develop ourselves the links we would like to develop with the different communities we have abroad.
True. Now, you already mentioned a couple of countries already providing, I would say, a current practice, some desired, I would say some absolutely not desired. I may think of, you already mentioned Estonia, but I was thinking of the US Patriot Act. That is a reach beyond, very much beyond what they should be controlling. So how do you then, seeing that that's happening, how do you then build, or is there a legal regime to discuss and organize this extraterritorial outreach?
Yes, so for instance, I will start with giving an example.
Okay.
You have I think a fiscal convention between French and Germany,
Yeah.
which says that if you have, for instance, children from a French-German household, then you can choose whether you want to adopt the French or the German legal status independently where you live. I mean, you can live in France and adopt the German inheritance status or the opposite. So this is typically an example of something you can choose between the different rules, and this could be on a much greater scale for I mean, worldwide, at least in the European Union, for instance.
Okay, yeah, because I can understand. I mean, when you talk the example, France, Germany, is this a bilateral legal regime they set up? Is it a part of the European Commission's legal regime?
So no, it's I mean it's not really it's not generalized at the level of European. It's still at the bilateral, but we could put it higher at the European level. And also you have practices that you can do on a much more global scale. One is called equity, which is equity extraterritoriality. It's a regime that has been, the concept has been explained by an American lawyer called Nathan Park. And it allows, basically what it will do is allows a priority on the person rather than on the territory. So it is a legal practice that can be developed, which is very useful, for instance, in our times where we have immaterial assets, intangible assets, which belong to the person rather than to a territory. So that's a regime that is somehow developed, but not completely. So if there would be an understanding at a more general level, that could be more supportive of extraterritorial relationships.
Okay, I'm starting to sense what you're talking about when you talk about this what Nathan Park is proposing. But then again, who is the organizations, or are the organizations who then provide that legal regime? What?
So that's a good question. So there is already much to do at the European level between the states, but we could also have a parallel work at a more global scale, maybe by the Council of Europe, or maybe by the UNESCO, or maybe by other UN agencies to develop this kind of concepts. Maybe, for instance, to give very pragmatical objectives to such a work, we could develop a better European citizen status on the EU, which would use this kind of features of new relationships. And maybe at the international level, we could develop more protection on art, more also perhaps more freedom for choosing, voting in a country or another, things like that. So maybe
Okay.
we have also, yes, practical examples of what we can do.
Okay, Guy, a two-part question. First of all, the way you describe it, this seems to benefit the individual. So I was wondering if you could take us, what are the real benefits for the individual, and um, would this also benefit other stakeholders in this discussion?
Yeah. Well, for the individual persons, natural person, that would be essentially more freedom of choice, more freedom of choice of what you can do with one state and what you can do with another one, and at the same time, and which has priority onto what kind of relationships. It can bring you more functional advantage in terms of economic and cultural relationships. And for the states, what it would bring is a better, maybe better digital accountability, and more optimized relationships with their diasporas abroad, with their linguistic influence spheres, and also uh, maybe a kind of a soft power competition, which is something more dynamism, and also more understanding with other states. So it's a long way road. It's not a one, but it's something that we have today. We have community management tools. We have digital ecosystems. We have digital identity. We have nearly digital money. We are about to have digital money. So I mean, we have all the instruments to build this new kind of relationships. So I think we can progress on that.
Okay, now you've described a North Star of what this could lead to. Um, what's the way forward? What do you see as the next steps we should take if we desire to follow that North Star?
Well, I think that um, yeah, one of the way would be to have stakeholders to be motivated to progress on this road. As I say, starting maybe by the European Commission, for instance, for this new citizen status, European citizen status, or with the Council of Europe, regarding new rights of freedom and international relationships and digital accountability. And so we can have some of these forums to effectively get the members to see how we can apply some new rules, extraterritorial rules, in the benefit of all members and in a good understanding. And then we can have maybe a larger also take up by, for instance, the UNESCO for cultural relationships, or by other stakeholders, US, UN development agencies, or other kind of stakeholders. So what essentially I think is really to give a more profound thinking about all the other many digital innovations, but we need to get them in a broader way, how they can apply to our population communities in the benefits of citizens and business organizations, and also the states. And I think that can be a load. Let's not forget also that it can, if we are maybe desacralizing a little bit the geographic territory, it can also bring more appetence for peace, I mean, not to fight so violently in wars for geographic territories if they become a little less important. So that may be also another aspect to consider.
Okay, so on the long run, there are a number of benefits you just mentioned for individuals and society as a whole. In my conclusion, following your discussion, the fact that we talk about extraterritorial outreach, at a certain point, that for me means you are consciously aware that you have territorial and extraterritorial outreach. Could it be in the far future, do you see that we're going to be oblivious? We just have a digital outreach and that's completely decoupled from the territory. So by calling it extraterritorial, you link it to the territorial mindset. So is this like the end goal, or is that like a milestone towards what the end goal could be, that we have the digital outreach and the territorial outreach?
Yeah, no, the goal would be that they would be aligned, but the truth is that we are calling it today extraterritorial because the people would not understand if we call it territorial today.
Yeah.
But the objective is that the territory itself is changing, and so in the long term, that would not be territorial anymore. It would be a new concept, maybe. To give you an example, let's look at what has been going on in the European Union. You know, we used to have this concept very important of nationality. And now that we are all together, 27 member states, what we see is that nationality has become something discriminant. You know, you cannot do anymore a law based on nationality. You have to do on citizenship, on residence, but you cannot anymore make a law only for your nationals. It's not anymore possible. So that's an example of how things have been changing from the past. So I mean, we just have to see that the future will be something around the same. You know, that we will have a kind of citizenships which will be much more open and much more flexible and much more harmonized. But we need to build this, and that's where we need to just sit together and develop a new frames of concept.
Okay, Guy, it's been very educational for me. You have given us, and hopefully the audience as well, lots of food for thought, how we can view this digital world and territory around us. Last question from my side: how can we, from the Institute for Accountability in the Digital Age, help you with sharing these insights in the world? What can we do for you?
Well, maybe what we can do is first, thank you, because the fact that you invite me to talk is already a very useful contribution. Maybe what we can do is we can write a paper on this, a small paper, not something very elaborate, but that can be a tool to make these new ideas a little widespread. And maybe if we gain attention from various stakeholders, then I'll be happy to participate in any meeting or something like that.
Okay. Well, let's hope that this discussion has triggered a couple of people out there to start to think about this, contact us so we can introduce you to each other. And again, learned a lot. It was illuminating. And Guy, thank you so much for sharing your insights of how we could shape our future environment.
Thank you. Thanks to you, Fritz, and to all the members of the Digital Accountability Forum. Thank you.